candidates, Ed Miliband and Ed Balls, criticising the war in Iraq?
Why are two of the leading candidates, that is Ed Miliband and Ed Balls, criticising the war in Iraq? Piers Morgan.
Because they are gutless, unprincipled little cowards, is the answer. How very, very convenient for these two when they're trying to move on with their careers that they're now going to stand there and say, I never agree with the war in Iraq. Well, where the hell were they when 1.7 million people were marching through the streets of London? Where were they when this country, the majority that I spoke to, were anti this war and saying so aggressively? For these guys to stand up here now and say, all along, we never thought this was a good idea, is some of the worst politicking I've seen in a very long time. And they deserve not to win because of what they've done with this Iraq thing. I would urge people not to vote for them. Because you cannot do this. The war in Iraq was the great political story of the last 15 years. It remains one of the great foreign policy disasters this country has had, I think, by common consent. And it just sticks in my gullet that these politicians who were there at the time, they weren't in government, as they've made it very clear, but they were MPs and they were vocal about all sorts of issues. They just sat on their backsides and let people die. And it's unacceptable. Really is unacceptable.
I don't think they were MPs, actually, at the time the decision was made. But Ed Balls said of this, and Ed Balls is right at the heart of Labour, said it was a mistake. On the information we had, we shouldn't have prosecuted the war. On the information we had. So he does disagree. And Ed Miliband said it was a catastrophic loss of trust for us, for a lot of people, because you didn't give them time. What do you say to that?
I disagree.
And why are they saying this now?
I mean, first of all, Piers and I, we've argued about Iraq over many, many years. We're never, ever going to agree on it. I did support what Tony Blair and the Cabinet did, and I still do to this day. I think history will view it very, very differently. I think that in relation to the two Eds, and it's odd this contest with two Milibands and two Eds and all the rest of it, but if you can follow them, Ed Miliband...
Which one are you for, by the way?
I have said, and actually to go along with what Piers just said, this has reinforced my view in this. I've said I will back David Miliband because my view in this is who is the person most likely to beat David Cameron at the next general election. And I thought that I like Ed Miliband and I like Ed Balls and they've got a lot of strengths, but I did think that at a time when the leadership election is starting, it is really important that all the candidates, as this coalition's getting off and it's doing a pretty fast job, it's really moving, and the Labour Party, as it selects a new leader, has really got to start focusing on an agenda for the future. And I think that there's nobody in this room, I suspect, who hasn't made up their mind about Iraq. And I do agree with Piers that I think if there were really, really strong feelings to be voiced about it, then they certainly had the access. And I don't recall hearing the strong feelings being voiced back then.
Max Hastings.
Well, I was one of the useful idiots who believed Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair when they told us that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. I'm afraid it was the last time I believed Alistair about whether it was Monday or Tuesday.
You called him the most duplicitous man in public life.
But he did agree to sit on the same panel.
I think I said that he and Peter Mandelson were the two most duplicitous men in public life.
So he was one of the two most duplicitous
We've always been joined at this.
That was partly, I guess, on the basis that I was one of those. I actually was a believer in New Labour before the Iraq War, and the Iraq War was what changed my mind.
But do you believe that still, that he's duplicitous, that he lives in a moral vacuum?
In the end, he was party to, as Piers has said, and I agree with Piers about this, there can be nothing more serious that a government can do than to take the nation to war under false pretences.
But they weren't false pretences.
The government in which Alistair Campbell was complicit did.
All right, hold on, Alistair. Just answer the question about Ed Miliband and Ed Balls and why they're now criticising the war.
I think there is a moment when you've got to move on. The Labour Party needs now, where Alistair and I might even agree, is that it's time for the Labour Party to start thinking about how it's going to be in opposition to the Cameron government, not about how it's going to be in opposition to the last government, but to. And there is something slightly pathetic about the candidates for the next leader of the Labour Party arguing about who did what all those years ago. In the end, they've got to look ahead, and unless the Labour Party can look ahead, then it's not going to be a credible opposition to David Cameron.
Man in the third row in the check show.
I just want to say I'm kind of actually quite shocked that Alistair Campbell just said you're